Hi, my name is Dave Werden. I'm a euphonium player. You may already know that if you've seen me with the Coast Guard Band, where I was for quite a while, or later. Now I've been putting videos up on YouTube, and also I have a blog and forum that are pretty popular among euphonium and tuba players at dwerden.com. Reading there, you may also have learned that I play the Adams custom euphonium. I chose the instrument for the same reason that any of you should probably choose your own instrument, and that is because it plays very well for me. It gives me the sound that I want and has the other playing qualities that I'll need to do a good job. The horn's very responsive. It's the best responding horn I've ever played. Intonation is also the best of any horn I've ever played. You can see I don't have a tuning slide trigger on this horn. I also like the tone. I will not compromise on tone. All my professional career, I've looked at every instrument that came out and played them. Some of them matched my concept of tone and some of them didn't, and the Adams is a very good match. It's also customizable. Today I want to talk about some of the features and what goes into building an Adams euphonium. First of all, I should probably talk about the finish, because you may have noticed this is not the same appearance as most professional horns. This particular finish is the one I like the best. It's called a brushed finish, and the metal is actually brushed. A wire brush goes over it, creates these striations or scratches in the metal, and it makes it play with the light, so the light moves in different ways across the instrument than it would with a shiny instrument or a softer satin finish instrument. Those finishes, by the way, are available. I could have this same instrument in shiny silver if I wanted to, or a bright lacquer finish. I've got a couple of videos on YouTube where you'll see me playing the bright lacquer version of this. The metals in the instrument are also kind of apparent visually in this particular horn. There are 4 different types of metal that go into this horn. On the small tube, we have yellow brass. Adams has found that the yellow brass is better for giving you fast-acting valves that last well over a long time. As the tubes get a little larger, we go here to the long bow and the bottom bow. These are both of gold brass, a little more copper in the content. The tuning slide is red brass, which has even more copper. The bell is perhaps the most interesting part, because it's not just silver plated, it is a sterling silver bell. So the metal is all sterling silver. Inside the instrument now, this is bright finish, which also has a little interest as you turn playing before an audience. The other thing about the Adams, one of the other things I should say, there's many features. The metal itself comes in 5 different thicknesses on the euphonium. I'm talking about the wall thickness of the tubing, so the thickness this way. Comes in 5/0, 5/5, 6/0, 7/0, and 8/0 thicknesses. This particular one is a 6/0. It's kind of in the middle. I like it quite a lot for tone. I also like the 5/5 quite a lot. Those are my favorites. On all the instruments, I think this feature does contribute, in addition to the thickness, to the playing characteristics, and that is the metal stays a uniform thickness throughout the horn. So in some cases, a tube like this, which is tapered, it's smaller here than it is here, would be made by putting a brass tube inside a form that was shaped like this. Then they blow hydraulic fluid and it expands the piece. So it's larger at this end and smaller at this end, which is fine, and it's also a very quick way to make an instrument. That saves a lot of time. However, by expanding more here to make it larger, the metal's slightly thinner here. The Adams instead is made of sheet metal. So the sheet metal is formed for all these tubes, and therefore it's a uniform thickness because it's simply wrapped around the form. The uniform thickness, I think, helps the horn really resonate. Another unique feature of the Adams is the adjustable gap receiver. I've written about that on my blog and in the forum, and you might be able to find those fairly easily. The reason for an adjustable gap receiver is the receiver is the part that the mouthpiece actually fits into. The curved tube that comes off that is called the lead pipe. Because mouthpieces vary slightly in their taper and length in this part, the lead pipe is inside the receiver along with the mouthpiece, and sometimes they never will meet up like this. Otherwise, if your mouthpiece wore slightly so it wanted to go in further, it would hit the lead pipe before it fully seated inside the receiver, and it would wobble or fall out. So there's always a gap between the end of the mouthpiece and the beginning of the lead pipe. Now, there actually are makers that talk about the ideal gap, and there's some players that talk about it too. So you might have your mouthpiece shaved or pick a particular mouthpiece so it creates that gap because of how it fits in the receiver. In this case, though, the receiver on the Adams is adjustable. This piece here, which is the receiver, is held in place by this thumb screw, or held tight by the thumb screw. And it's threaded inside here, so by turning back and forth, you move the receiver in and out slightly, even though the lead pipe stays where it is. That way you can pull the end of the mouthpiece. We'll pretend this is the lead pipe for now. You can pull the end of the mouthpiece further away or closer. It does make a big difference. I found when I played one of the demo horns and I was deciding if I wanted to play an Adams or not. I was playing a piece that I've done in the past, the Claude Smith Rondo for trumpet. Very dangerous piece. A lot of jumps, a lot of high notes that are hard to hit accurately. And I wasn't hitting them very accurately. And Neil Adams was at the display. He came over and said, "Here, give me the horn for a second." He loosened this, moved the receiver, the adjustable receiver, out a couple of full turns, creating a slightly wider gap, and suddenly it was much easier to play. So it does make a difference. It also affects the tone slightly. I haven't noticed it affecting intonation very much, but it gives you a lot of choices for how the instrument feels and the ultimate tone that gets out to the audience. Again, that is unique to the Adams right now. So those are some of the standard features that you can get on the Adams instrument. I'll say standard because you order it and say, "I want this finished," and they'll make it finished this way for you. You can order it without the adjustable gap receiver if you think it's silly and you don't need it. You can have a standard receiver there. So that's all possible. On this horn, though, I took advantage of the fact that it is a custom horn and can be made to order. In my case, I wanted this bent slightly differently from most lead pipes. My embouchure is such that the mouthpiece tends to stick straight out. I had them bring this mouthpiece down, the lead pipe, and the mouthpiece too, down a little bit. So I position the horn. I don't need to bend over to get the right angle on the mouthpiece. The angle's already pretty good right there. My original Adams, this is a newer sample. I had them make this especially narrow for me because I had an injury years ago on this left wrist. It doesn't do well with a wide reach here, particularly when I had a trigger on my previous brand. That was very uncomfortable for me. I wanted a very narrow reach, so he made this as short as he could and also adjusted the wrap of the instrument to change where the fourth valve, how it was positioned, to make the reach to the fourth valve smaller. That was nice. On the new horns, they don't need that, so they've taken, again, user input, people at shows that talk, or players like me who use the horn, and made adjustments to make the instrument comfortable. Now the gap is quite comfortable. I have large hands, but I prefer a small reach, and as you can see, I can overreach easily, so it's a very comfortable position to hold the horn. What I wanted to do, however, I wanted to use the Amato water key. Where a normal water key has the lever, and then there's a hole drilled with a little short passageway. That little short passageway, which is about that long, is open on the inside end, the part that is inside there. It only closes at the 1/8 inch or so away from the tube as the water key and its cork or pad touch it. Well, that creates a little turbulence inside the tube here. Not a lot. The horns have had that for years. They've been fine. But I was trying to eliminate that turbulence. So I'm using the Amato key. Just this little plunger. You can see it drains fine. If you were to look down inside the second valve, it's especially easy to do because it's so short, you can see that all there is the hole in the tube here that actually lets the water out. And then the plunger, the seal, is right below that hole, so you don't have that tube extending down of hollow space that you don't really want. I found it most handy to have that on the second valve. This is the one we seem to have to empty most often on Euphonium, particularly in performances. Normally you'd have to hold the horn, you push this down, you grab a ring down here, pull it out, and you try to make as little noise as possible, dump it out, which is kind of unsightly for the audience, and put it back in. Hard to do quickly. With the Amato key, that's all you have to do. Because of the way normal water keys fit, which is here, or here, or here, we don't want it at that same position because, well, I was a little sloppy and I actually dripped water on the horn anyway. We want it to be here So when I drain water, I can tip the horn forward and it misses these tubes entirely. So this one's here. I thought I would also have the other ones on all 4 slides positioned the same way. So again, if I have to quickly empty it, or here if I need that one as well. I wanted one on the tuning slide too, so you can see it there. You may notice on the tuning slide though, the plunger, which normally would be here, is here. Reason being, if the plunger were here, I'd rest it against my stomach and it would open the water key. And that would be water dripping down my front during a performance, which is not a pretty thing. So that was a customization I wanted as well. They went one step further now on the second slide. I'll get my fingers out of the way. And you may be able to see that on the second slide, in addition to the Amato water key, which you don't want to yank on this when you're pulling the slide out, there's an extra knob here, so I can get the slide out by just yanking on this knob rather than pulling on the Amato water key, which also has moving parts, and you don't want to use that as a handle. So that's a little tour of the features on the Adams Custom Euphonium, the ones that come with it, and the ones that I chose to have added to it. There's a trigger available if you really want to have the trigger. It fits like all the other ones do, right here. You can do almost anything you need to have done, and they will try to help you with that. They build the horns mostly by hand, so that gives them the option of doing this kind of thing. Also, it helps them to improve the horn very gradually. They can get a suggestion from somebody and implement it fairly quickly because they don't have a lot of these vacuum forms I was talking about. The hydraulic forms are expensive to make. If they want to change a curve like this, it's a little easier when you're building the horns by hand and not using big machines to do everything. So that's the story behind the Adams Custom. I hope you've learned something from this, and I hope you get a chance to try the instruments because they're very good instruments. I think you'll like them. Thanks for listening.